YouTube? My name is Kate and this is my channel, Chapter Kate. Today I'm going to be recommending books based on my irrational fears. If you happen to have been watching my channel for a little while, you may notice that this video has already been done. So this is a part 2. Some of these fears will be the same, some of these fears will be different. We change over time as people. Blech. But the thing that makes this different, besides the fact that there are new and exciting fears to discuss, is that this is also the second Monsterathon challenge. Third if we're gonna include the TBR, but still, second actual challenge thing, whatever. So for those participating in the Monsterathon, your challenge is to recommend 3 books based on your fears. You can recommend 3 books based on 1 fear, or 3 books based on 3 fears, or 2 books based on 1 fear and 1 book based on another fear. But I'm going to be recommending more than that, because I'm extra, which we all know. Okay, so the first fear is bridges. I'm terrified of bridges. Something I've learned about myself is that I'm not afraid of airplanes, I'm not afraid of being in a helicopter, I'm not afraid of that, but I'm terrified of bridges. I don't know. There just happens to be a whole ton of bridges around here for me to drive on while freaking out. Love it. So for this fear recommendation, I'm going to be going with City of Ghosts and Tunnel of Bones by V.E. Schwab, or Victoria Schwab, the Schwabster. No one says that. You may be asking, Kate, you're supposed to be recommending 1 book. And I might answer, I never said that. I never put a rule on this. Fight me. The reason I'm recommending these books for the Bridges prompt is because the main character, Cassie Blake, is that a dog hair? The reason that I'm recommending these 2 books is that the main character, Cassie Blake, is sort of a bridge between the living and the dead. Cassie Blake almost died drowning. She was saved by a ghost named Jacob. But now she has a residual effect of that she can talk to ghosts. She can enter the veil, which is these little pocket universes based around a ghost's significant memories or something. But then also she has her little ghost friend named Jacob now, and no one else can see Jacob, but she can see Jacob. But that's the premise of these stories. In addition to that, her parents are both ghost hunters, which kind of sounds like a Danny Phantom situation, but it's a little bit different. They like to write books, and they're currently filming a show. Her mom's the more whimsical type, who's very ooh, spooky ghost stories, storyteller. That was not descriptive. And then her dad's the more logical historian guy. In the first book, City of Ghosts, they have traveled to Edinburgh. And Edinburgh is known to be very haunted, so there's a whole ton of ghosts there. And then in Tunnel of Bones, they travel to Paris. In Paris, there are catacombs beneath the city where there are just a whole ton of bones. So many bones, all the bones. Bones. I really enjoy the series because Cassie Blake is just her own hero. She is very confident. She's a Gryffindor, self-proclaimed. She is adventurous. Her friendship with Jacob is just so... I just love it. It's what a friendship should aspire to be. Also, she has a cat named Grimm. He's not a huge part of the story, but he's in a lot of the story. And also, he's a little weird for a cat, so who knows what's going on there. Maybe we'll find out in another book. I don't know. My next fear is quite common, and that is death. I'm terrified of dying. Just am. And for this one, I'm going to recommend Beds Are for Flowers by R.K. Gold. Ari is actually a booktuber himself, and you should definitely go check him out. He's a great guy. He's also an author tuber. Does the both, you know. This book explores the idea of loss and death. In this world, there's very little color and light. People just kind of get sicker and sicker and weaker until Reapers, which are, essentially a Grim Reaper type character here, but there's multiple, actually have to take them and lead them to the end and guide them there. So they don't just keep withering, they try to, guide them while they still have enough strength to make it to the end. I really found the writing in this to be very beautiful and poignant. And as someone who is afraid of death, I thought this addressed it in a way that was very peaceful. My next irrational fear is losing my hearing or my voice. These are 2 very different things. My voice is my instrument. I'm a singer. I'm in a band. I sing often and I talk a lot, as you well know. Anytime I get sick and my voice goes away, I'm always is it going to come back? And I get a little bit anxious about that. As for my hearing, as someone who's in a band and I'm at shows a lot, anytime I have a show, I feel a distinct lack of certain tones and certain pitches, and it makes me very nervous as well. My hearing is very sensitive. I hear very quiet things, but I can't always understand what people are saying to me, and pick things apart, and so it's a little bit nerve-wracking to me. But those are 2 things that I've always been very nervous of losing. For this fear recommendation, I'm going to be going with space opera. In this book, aliens basically come to a point where they realize that Earth people are getting really close to kind of discovering them, and so they just go ahead and make that first contact. The issue is that they want to decide whether the human race deserves to live, to be allowed to live. They pose this as a large song competition to decide if the Earth people are sentient. As you can imagine, there's a lot of things that humans have done that make us not look so great, obviously. So it's up to a retired and strung out rock star to sort of save the world with his power of song. This book has a lot of tongue-in-cheek moments, which I really enjoyed. It's very descriptive and has very rich histories to every planet. So if you really like that kind of detail, then I think you'll really enjoy this book. Also, if you like Eurovision, I think you'll enjoy this book. Space Opera by Catherine M. Valente. Do it. Read it. Pick it up. My next irrational fear is anthropomorphic animals. As I explained in last year's video, I had a ticket to see Sesame Street live when I was very young, and it was like the first or second row. And as you can imagine, I was terrified because those things, animatronics up close, are kind of scary. Yeah, so now anybody in like a really realistic, like animal costume, furries, mascots, Muppets, I get really anxious and nervous around. They make me feel very uncomfortable, like in a deep way. So I'm scared of those. So for my recommendation, I had to pick The Madman's Daughter by Megan Shepherd. This book is based off of The Island of Dr. Moreau. The Island of Dr. Moreau is a book by H.G. Wells where Dr. Moreau is kind of trying to give humanity to animals. So it kind of ends up creating these creatures that are basically humans with animal-like traits. In The Madman's Daughter, Dr. Moreau has a daughter. So there's a whole different level to this story. Everything's kind of done from her perspective. She starts off not really knowing much about his experiments. She thinks that he is innocent of everything, even though she's been outcast because of his choices. I didn't know how I would feel about this book. I knew that the sequel was based on Frankenstein, so I wanted to read this one, but I really didn't know how to feel about it. It had a very gothic horror feel about the writing, which I loved. But as you read it, you start realizing this is a romance novel. Like, this is a straight up romance novel. I was tricked into reading a romance novel, but I didn't hate it. I actually really enjoyed this. I definitely will be picking up the second one. My next irrational fear is actually pretty common as well, and this is needles. I really hate needles. I don't have my ears pierced. I don't like shots. I don't like anything with needles. Even talking about them makes me so nervous. I feel like I'm shaking right now just talking about it. So let's just go to the recommendation, shall we? For this recommendation, I'm going to be going with Heroine by Mindy McGinnis. This is a recent release. I read this as part of the Green Ribbon Book Club last month. This book follows Mickey, who's the star catcher on her school's softball team. Softball is her life. It's so important to her. But then her and her friend are driving one day and she gets into a wreck. As many addiction stories start, Mickey is given painkillers while she is in the hospital while she is trying to recover. She starts using more than her prescribed dose so she can get better faster, so that way she'll be ready in time for conditioning for the season. Her need for these pills quickly moves from I'm using them for this to get better to I'm using them to feel good. When she can't get the pills, she starts getting them illegally, and then she starts administering them different ways, including injection, and then she eventually moves on to heroin itself. And so this book is a really good look into what addiction does to someone, how that can progress, how that looks from the outside, how it can impact your life. My next irrational fear is arguments. I really hate arguments. Arguments are actually part of my trauma with my PTSD, so arguments have never been fun for me. I hate them. I hate them so much. I hate confrontation. Just part of the reason that I feel like assertive communication is so important to me. So for this fear recommendation, I'm gonna go with The Assassination of Brangwain Spurge. This book is so unique. It has a storyline, but then it also has pictures. Like it has just plain writing, and then it has pictures. So the writing is all told from the goblin's perspective, and it has a completely different vibe to it than the pictures do. So essentially the elf is actually visiting the goblin's turf, sort of, posed as a scholar wanting to learn. He is a scholar, but there are other things that he's there for. So the goblin is, very friendly and showing him around and everything, and there's his perspective. But then when you see the pictures that the elf is sort of sending back to the elf people, it looks a lot scarier than what the goblins described. So it's very interesting seeing two perspectives of something, and they also are bickering the entire book, which I really enjoyed. But this is by M.T. Anderson and Eugene Yelchin. And the last irrational fear is time passing. And for this book, I'm going to be recommending Welcome to Night Vale by Joseph Fink and Jeffrey Craner. Welcome to Night Vale is a podcast told in the style of a radio dude who's kind of just telling the news of this very strange town. The reason that I'm recommending this one for the aging prompt is because there's a character in here who is stuck at age 19. She's just stuck there. Everyone else is living their lives, but she is stuck there. You find out more about her as you go on and about that whole situation, but I thought that it was very appropriate for that particular recommendation. If you've ever listened to the podcast, there is this man in a tan jacket. Everyone who sees him remembers that he has a tan jacket and a deerskin briefcase, but they can't remember anything else about him. As soon as they look away, they forget his name, they forget everything else. So the characters in this book are sort of affected by that. There's one person who actually can remember him, and then there's someone else who's been affected by something that man has done. So it kind of follows them throughout the town, trying to uncover this mystery and trying to get their lives back on track after he's sort of come and messed everything up. But I really enjoy this book because it's funny, it's weird, it accepts that it's weird, and it works. It makes it work. It's very amusing and odd. And I like weird. It's good. It's a good book. Pick it up. If you are participating in the Monsterathon and you want to complete this challenge, make sure you tag us on Twitter or you put your link below in this video. Leave one of your weird irrational fears below. But that's all for this video. If you would like more of this junk, subscribe below. Bye!
Tripping over shadows and I'm drowning